You know, life can be funny. We build this idea in our heads about what we deserve, who we should be with, and what a perfect relationship looks like. I had that bubble. A bubble where I believed that if I worked hard enough, put in the effort, and stayed loyal, everything would fall into place. I believed in one thing above all: true love can withstand anything, but reality has a way of bursting those bubbles. And let me tell you, when it does, it hits harder than you can imagine. I had always told myself that love was something you fought for, that if I just worked harder, pushed through the tough times, my marriage to Emily would work out. After all, wasn't that the essence of love? Loyalty, compromise, and unshakable trust? The thing is, I thought my dreams, my career, were supposed to come first. I believed that I needed to build success before anything else. Money, status, a solid foundation. Then everything else would follow. But what I didn't realize was how much I was neglecting the one thing that truly mattered: my relationship. You see, that belief system I had? It was flawed. I didn't even know it at the time, but I was setting myself up for disappointment. I dreamed of a future with Emily, of building a life together, but I was so consumed with work and ambition that I didn't notice her slipping away. I didn't even see the signs until it was almost too late. I remember the first time I realized there was a problem. It wasn't a big fight or a dramatic moment. It was more subtle, like a crack in the foundation that you don't notice until the whole house starts to shake. Emily seemed distant. She had her own life, her own friends, her own goals. And me? I was too busy chasing mine, and that's where the conflict started. The conflict between what I believed was right for my future, and what was really slipping away in the present. Was success worth it if I was losing the person I loved? Could I have it all, or did I have to choose? The truth is, I was too focused on my dreams and fears to see the bigger picture. I was afraid that if I didn't make it, if I didn't climb the ladder of success, I'd fail. And I didn't know how to balance both. But let me tell you, life isn't about just achieving success. It's about what you have beside you when you get there. And I was about to learn that the hard way. It wasn't an easy decision. I'll be honest with you. Breaking up with Emily felt like tearing apart something that had once felt so solid. But the longer we drifted, the more I realized I wasn't giving her what she needed. I was so wrapped up in my own ambitions, in my pursuit of success, that I didn't notice her slipping away. Emily had always been supportive, always there for me, but she needed more than just a man who worked all the time. She needed someone who could be present, someone who could show up for her the way she had for me. I kept telling myself that once I had everything figured out, once I had built the life I wanted, things would get better. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. No matter how successful I became, if I wasn't emotionally available, it wouldn't matter. It wasn't about love anymore. I didn't want to be the kind of partner who was too distant to care. And I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't aware of the growing divide between us. So, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I told Emily it was over. It felt like I was giving up on everything I had worked for, but I knew I couldn't keep going on like this, living a lie. It was the hardest choice I've ever made. But sometimes, walking away is the only way to give yourself, and the other person, the space to grow. The hardest part of any breakup isn't the decision to end things, it's coming to terms with it. I thought I could handle it, that I could move on. But the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. I was left with a question I couldn't answer. Why couldn't I make it work? I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I'd missed something, anything that could have changed the outcome. What if I'd been more present? What if I'd made different choices? And what hurt the most, what I couldn't accept, was the fact that I had chosen my career over the woman I loved. Emily wasn't just a partner, she was my best friend. And letting go of that felt like cutting off a part of myself. I struggled with guilt, with shame, and with a growing sense of failure. How could I have been so blind to what was right in front of me? But then I realized, maybe this wasn't just about the breakup. It was about me learning to understand myself, to confront my own flaws. I had to accept the fact that I wasn't perfect, that I made mistakes, and that love doesn't work on autopilot. I had to face the truth about where I had gone wrong, and about the consequences of my own choices. It wasn't easy to swallow, but I had to accept that this was part of my journey. And sometimes, facing the truth head on is the only way to truly grow. After the breakup, it felt like everything I knew about myself was crumbling. I had always seen myself as someone who could handle anything, someone who could fix problems. But this was different. This was me facing my own shortcomings, my own mistakes, and it shook me to my core. I began to question everything. Was I enough? Did I deserve love? I had built my identity around success, but now, without Emily, it felt like that success was hollow. I thought I could keep my confidence intact, but without the woman who had been by my side for so long, I felt lost. I had always feared being judged, feared being seen as weak or incapable. But here I was, feeling small, defeated, and alone. It was as if my self-worth had been tied to the idea of being a provider, a man who could do it all. And without Emily, I felt like a failure. But something started to shift. In those quiet moments of self-doubt, I realized that my value wasn't defined by my achievements or by the success I had. It was defined by how I treated others, by my ability to learn from mistakes, and by my willingness to grow. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But I had to rebuild my sense of self, piece by piece. I had to learn that self-worth doesn't come from external validation, and that true strength comes from knowing who you are, even in the face of failure. The days after the breakup felt like a fog. Everything was numb, like I was floating through life without really living it. I'd always thought I could handle tough situations, but nothing could prepare me for the weight of losing Emily. It wasn't just about losing a partner, it was losing someone who had been my everything. She was the person I shared my dreams with, the one who understood me without words. And now, that was gone. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I kept waiting for her to walk through the door, but every time, I was reminded she wouldn't. It felt like my heart was breaking in 1,000 different ways. I tried to distract myself, throw myself into work. But nothing could fill the emptiness. There were nights I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of what I could have done differently. Was there something I missed? Was there a way to fix this? But as the days went on, I started to realize something. Pain was part of the process. Heartbreak, though excruciating, was something everyone goes through at some point in their life. And this pain wasn't just about losing Emily, it was about confronting the person I had become, the choices I had made, and the lessons I had to learn the hard way. It wasn't easy, but in the midst of this emotional turmoil, I began to understand that heartache, though devastating, can also be a catalyst for change. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to figure out who you really are, and to find the strength to start over. It was the hardest decision of my life, whether to stay and fight for what was left of our relationship, or to let go and move on. I had spent so much time thinking about what I wanted in life, about building my future. But now, I had to face the reality of the life I had built with Emily, and whether it was enough to keep fighting for. The truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. I loved Emily, but I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we once had. The distance between us felt like an insurmountable wall, and every time I thought about trying again, I was faced with the fear that it might just end in more pain. Could we really fix what was broken? But as I sat there, I realized that sometimes the hardest choices aren't about what you want, they're about what you need. What I needed was peace, and I knew I couldn't find it if I kept dragging both of us through uncertainty. I needed to stop clinging to the past and start thinking about my own future, without the shadow of what might have been hanging over me. I still loved Emily, but I also knew I had to let go to heal. Staying would mean continuing to live in the past, unable to move forward. And sometimes, letting go isn't about giving up, it's about giving yourself the chance to grow. So, I made the choice. I decided to move on. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was the right decision for both of us. Sometimes, the hardest thing in life is to let go of what you love, in order to find something better down the road. It's strange how, when you're going through something painful, you tend to isolate yourself. You think you can handle it on your own, that talking to someone will only make it worse. But deep down, I knew I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. So I reached out to my best friend, Dan. Dan was one of the few people who really understood me. He didn't judge. He didn't try to fix me. He just listened. And in that moment, it was exactly what I needed. I told him everything: the breakup, the emotional chaos, the guilt I couldn't shake. I expected him to say something wise, something that would give me all the answers, but instead, he just nodded and said, "You're not alone in this." It was simple, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. Talking it out helped me see that I didn't have to carry all of this weight by myself. There was strength in vulnerability, in reaching out to others for support. I didn't have to pretend that everything was okay when it wasn't, and that night, something changed. I started to realize that I wasn't the only one facing hard times, that everyone goes through their own struggles. Dan's words helped me see that healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we allow ourselves to lean on the people who care about us. In that moment, I understood that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And that, in itself, was one of the most important lessons I could have learned. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight, but slowly, over time, I started to feel like myself again. I found strength in the things I used to love, the activities that once gave me peace. Running became my outlet, a way to clear my mind and release all the emotional weight I had been carrying. It wasn't just about the physical exercise. It was about proving to myself that I could push through the pain. Every step I took on that path felt like a small victory, a reminder that I had the power to control my own future, no matter how much life had thrown at me. The more I ran, the more I thought about what I really wanted moving forward. It wasn't just about finding someone new or getting over the breakup. It was about rediscovering who I was without the label of husband attached to me. I had to find my own identity again. I needed to be my own person, to understand what I truly wanted out of life, not just in love, but in every part of my existence. And gradually, I started to heal. The wounds from the breakup didn't vanish, but they stopped controlling me. I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means growing from the experience. I became stronger in ways I didn't even expect. I found peace in my solitude, and that peace gave me the clarity to move forward. This journey of healing wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others. But with each passing day, I felt the weight lifting. And I began to understand something important. Strength doesn't come from never feeling pain. It comes from learning how to rise above it. It's funny how life works. I wasn't expecting to meet anyone new. After the breakup, I thought I was done with relationships for a while. I needed time to rebuild myself. But then I met Claire. It was one of those chance encounters that you don't plan for, but somehow, it just happens. We met through mutual friends, and at first, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I was ready to open up again, to put myself out there. Trust was something I had to relearn. The scars from my past relationship were still fresh, and the thought of being vulnerable again felt terrifying. But Claire was different. She didn't rush me. She didn't try to force anything. She just listened, and we talked about everything: our pasts, our dreams, the things we wanted out of life. And slowly, over time, I started to feel comfortable again. I began to trust that maybe, just maybe, I could love again. The process wasn't easy. There were moments when I felt unsure, when I feared history would repeat itself. But I realized that the only way to rebuild trust was to give it a chance. It wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about moving forward and allowing myself to be open to something new. With Claire, I learned that love isn't about perfection, it's about acceptance, about trusting that both people are willing to grow together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to give my heart to someone again. With the confidence that this time, it would be different. It's strange how you can spend so much of your life searching for something, and then one day, you find it when you least expect it. With Claire, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: true happiness. It wasn't just a spark of new love, It was the peace that came from knowing I had finally found someone who valued me for who I truly was. As we spent more time together, I began to see that love doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't require grand gestures or constant excitement. It's in the simple moments, the quiet walks, the shared laughter, the support we give each other. I realized that happiness comes from being with someone who respects you, who wants to build something real with you. No matter how imperfect things may be, looking back, I could see how far I had come. From the pain of the breakup to the self-doubt and fear of moving forward, I had learned so much. And now, I was starting a new chapter, one that was full of potential, not only in love but in life. I had found a partner who didn't just share my hopes and dreams but encouraged me to reach for them. The hardest lesson I had to learn was that you can't rush love, and you can't force it. It happens when the time is right, when you've healed enough to open your heart again, when you've learned to trust yourself. And now, with Claire, I knew I was ready for whatever the future held. It wasn't just about finding love again, it was about finding myself again. And in doing so, I realized that love isn't something you can control. It's something you grow into, with patience, understanding, and a willingness to embrace the future. It's funny how life can surprise you when you least expect it. I used to believe that I was defined by my failures, by the mistakes I made, and by the pain I had experienced. I thought that the end of my marriage meant the end of everything I had worked for, everything I believed in. But standing here today, with Claire by my side, I realized that the end of one chapter is simply the beginning of another. Looking out at the city before me, I see more than just buildings and streets. I see the future. It's mine to shape, just like it always has been. The man I was a year ago, consumed by grief, insecurity, and doubt, is still a part of me, but he no longer holds the reins. I've let go of that version of myself. And in doing so, I've allowed space for someone new to emerge, the man who's learned to heal, who's learned to love again, and who now understands the power of a fresh start. I won't lie, the journey wasn't easy. There were days when I thought the pain would never end, days when I questioned whether I could trust myself again, let alone anyone else. But I kept going. Slowly, over time, I started to rebuild. I took the lessons from my past and turned them into stepping stones for my future. And one of the most important lessons I learned was that true strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing it head-on and allowing it to shape you into something better. It's strange to think that I once believed I'd never be able to open my heart again. That love, for me, was a thing of the past. But then I met Claire, and everything changed. What started as a friendship blossomed into something more. With her, I didn't feel the need to hide my scars. She accepted me for who I was, not who I was trying to be. And in return, I found myself accepting her with the same openness, willing to embrace the future, not with fear, but with excitement. What I've come to realize is that love doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to let go of the past. When I first thought about starting over, it seemed impossible. How could I love again after everything that happened? But love isn't about forgetting what you've been through. It's about understanding that the experiences you've had, both good and bad, are part of who you are. They don't define you, but they teach you how to move forward, how to grow, and how to be better. As I stand here with Claire, I'm filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. Gratitude for the strength I found in myself that I never knew I had. And most of all, gratitude for this second chance at love. This time, I don't take it for granted. I know that relationships aren't easy, and they require effort, commitment, and trust. But with Claire, I feel like I've found a love that's built on the foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and a willingness to grow together. Looking back, I understand now that the hardest part of my journey wasn't the breakup itself. It was learning to trust myself again, to believe that I was worthy of love and happiness. For a long time, I doubted that. But today, I stand here with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that I am capable of love, capable of happiness, and capable of creating a life filled with meaning. What I've come to realize is that love doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to let go of the past. When I first thought about starting over, it seemed impossible. How could I love again after everything that happened? But love isn't about forgetting what you've been through. It's about understanding that the experiences you've had, both good and bad, are part of who you are. They don't define you, but they teach you how to move forward, how to grow, and how to be better. As I stand here with Claire, I'm filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. Gratitude for the strength I found in myself that I never knew I had. And most of all, gratitude for this second chance at love. This time, I don't take it for granted. I know that relationships aren't easy, and they require effort, commitment, and trust. But with Claire, I feel like I've found a love that's built on the foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and a willingness to grow together. Looking back, I understand now that the hardest part of my journey wasn't the breakup itself. It was learning to trust myself again, to believe that I was worthy of love and happiness. For a long time, I doubted that. But today, I stand here with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that I am capable of love, capable of happiness, and capable of creating a life filled with meaning.